Check out the website simplepassivecashflow.com for podcasts, videos, articles, and free e-courses. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to the team via email and we'll get you pointed in the right direction, whether it be an educational course or information about syndication deals. If you haven't read my book, The Journey to Simple Passive Cashflow, click the link below to get a free copy. Thanks to John and the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. Our team is here to help you take the first step, or if you're a seasoned investor, then we're here to expand your reach into alternative investing.
Are you tired of trying to keep ahead in the rat race, only to have so much of your hard-earned money going to the tax collector? Equity doesn't pay the bills. Retirement savings don't pay you now, and there are only 24 hours in a day to work. The only solution is passive income that pays you 24/7 now, not 40 years from now. From vetted investment opportunities to tax saving strategies. Let John guide you through all the confusion and take control of your financial life in pursuit of financial freedom. So sit back, relax, and welcome to the Wealth and Freedom Nexus.
You know, for the most passive returns in real estate investing, I like to put my money with Freedom Family Investments, a team I personally trust because they pay me steady streams of cash flow, hassle-free, all while doing the things I love. Returns are better and more reliable than the stock market, up to 12%. I love that tax benefits offset capital gains or your W-2 income. For a little insider pro tip, knowing who to trust is key to success in investing. Freedom Family Investments has a perfect track record of paying their investors right on time. To learn more, text family to 66866. If you want to invest on autopilot with people I personally trust and with a team who cares about you reaching your financial goals, go ahead and text family to 66866. Hey there, welcome back to another great episode of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. Hard to believe this is episode 115, dropping on December 27th. So for those that celebrate, hope you all had a Merry Christmas and wish nothing but the best for you as we round the corner ending 2023 into 2024. Now, as I was trying to decide what to do for the last episode for the year, I wanted to get on a guest, but as many can probably appreciate, for those out there that run podcasts as well, sometimes, schedules just don't match up. And sometimes you have people bail. I actually had one that just flat out didn't show up, even though she clicked on the link, says, yep, I'll be there, and all that stuff, and just didn't show and haven't heard a word since. So, in all honesty, I hope everything is, okay. I hope nothing, major or impactful to health or anything like that occurred. So I hope everything's okay. But like I said, just kind of throws you for a loop when you have this planned out and has to go a different way. But as we are closing out 2023, I decided to highlight 5 episodes that I enjoyed the most myself. I hope my listeners enjoyed. And looking at the statistics, had the kind of the widest range for reach for downloads, demographics, areas, etc. So I'm just going to quick run down. If this is the first time joining us, or if you just want a quick refresher, here are the top 5 episodes that I enjoyed. I'm going to try to do this in numerical order. So we'll start with episode number 67. This was back in January. I interviewed 2 real estate agents from the island of Cyprus and did this kind of as a country spotlight. Kind of was intrigued by this, where I've always hoped to one day have an oceanfront property somewhere that, my wife and my son and I can enjoy, as a vacation home or retirement home or whatnot. But, some places, obviously, you have the expense of oceanside. You just think here in the U.S., West Coast or East Coast, try to find an oceanfront property that is maybe under $1 million. It could be very difficult to do that. And then you also have the natural disasters to worry about, especially hurricanes. If you're in Florida, just to name one area where Florida, if you invest in or have a property there, there's a lot of insurers that are either completely pulling out of the market or they are drastically increasing their premiums to cover their losses with all the hurricane damage. So there is that aspect of it. But as we talked about in episode 67, Cyprus lies in the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, there are storms and surges and such, but since it's more of like a basin, not a large ocean, you don't get the huge weather activity like you see, if you're in Florida or Mexico or California, just to name a couple. So that was one I really enjoyed, and hopefully someday I can actually make a trip to Cyprus, maybe on one of our anniversary trips. We'll see what happens. Coming up next was episode 69, had a guest, Meg, who really has been rocking it in the real estate business, and how she actually introduced me to interesting loan option that I was not aware of for FHA. So if you're intrigued by this, be sure to check out episode number 69, where I had Meg on, where she literally turned $400 into a $1.7 million real estate empire. So like I said, definitely quite the story. Had a lot of fun recording that, and definitely got a lot of traction and downloads with that podcast. Coming up next, it was actually one of our sponsors. We actually had Darren with Nosotros on and talking about the second most traded commodity in the world, and this is coffee or coffee beans. This is an investment that I have partaken in. I bought my parcel about 4 years ago. I think January 2020 when I purchased that. And hopefully in the next year and a half, we'll start paying or seeing dividends from that. We talked on the podcast that you can invest in, while you used to be able to get your own coffee parcel, they have switched more to a syndication model where you buy into a syndication where it's a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient, shall we say, and helps to avoid some of the like trust and titling issues, especially if you're doing this in self-directed retirement accounts, just to name a few. So again, that was Darren with Nosotros, capitalizing on the second most traded world commodity, which is coffee. And that was episode 73. We might have heard their name drop a few times on this podcast as they were a sponsor for a number of months as well. Then we had my friend Ryan Stengel and his partner from Prime Source Funding, how to navigate the hell of underwriting when it comes to properties. And I think, anything finance related, anything regulations related, that's going to shift and move. And, another legislation, Dodd-Frank 2.0 might come out. Generally speaking, I've tried to do a lot of podcast episodes, which are what's called evergreen, where it's timely information, but it doesn't get dated, or hopefully doesn't get dated as easily. So underwriting standards, there's always going to be, the W-2s, the tax forms, what to disclose, how to disclose it, when to disclose it, what the underwriters look for, seeing it from a standpoint of a loan servicer as well as an underwriter, and just going through all those headaches. And like I've said, I've seen this from an investor standpoint. I've seen this from a realtor. I've seen this as a real estate agent helping first-time home buyers and investors as well. So I just had a lot of tidbits and golden nuggets of information for dealing with the hell of underwriting. Again, that was with Ryan Stengel of Prime Source Funding. And then last, we actually had, this was actually episode 99, Toby Mathis of Anderson Advisors. I was finally able to get him on, where we talked a lot about asset protection, which I wanted to do a little bit more on this episode, but really only wanted to do a little bit more on this show, but only was able to highlight on a couple of episodes. So I was glad to finally get Toby on. That was episode 99, released earlier, or not too long ago, I should say. Really dived into a lot of the fear and sales tactics, if you will, in the asset protection space, so to speak. So kind of put to bed some of those fears, some of those myths when it comes to asset protection. So again, just as a quick rundown, we talked about episode 67, the country spotlight island of Cyprus. Episode 69, how Meg turned $400 into $1.7 million of real estate. Episode 73, how to profit off the second most traded commodity worldwide, which is coffee, with Darren of Nosotros. Dealing with the hell of underwriting with Ryan Stengel of Prime Source Funding on episode 77. And then finally rounding out Toby Mathis and touch base on asset protection. And that was back on episode 99.
Check out the website simplepassivecashflow.com for podcasts, videos, articles, and free e-courses. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to the team via email and we'll get you pointed in the right direction, whether it be an educational course or information about syndication deals. If you haven't read my book, The Journey to Simple Passive Cashflow, click the link below to get a free copy. Thanks to John and the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. Our team is here to help you take the first step, or if you're a seasoned investor, then we're here to expand your reach into alternative investing.
All right. So as we close out 2023, I kind of wanted to share a quick announcement. High level, I just want to share this has been quite the experience. I've really enjoyed doing this podcast the last a little over 2 years. When I dropped November of 2021, I reached a worldwide audience, North America, but over 100 countries, in the hundreds of thousands of downloads, was able to monetize it to a little extent, had some sponsorships through Buzzsprout, but also some paid sponsorships through people that have come on the show, whether it was Tim Hero of Hero Lending, Danny and Flip Robeson of Freedom Real Estate, Darren of Agner Sotris, just to name a couple of the sponsors I've had over the years, Barry Brooksby of Focus Wealth. So again, thank you for all your patronage and your listenership, and really have enjoyed it. That said, my life has definitely gone through a lot of changes over the last few years. Now, for those of you that have been with me from the very beginning, I launched the Wealth and Freedom Nexus website back in January of 2020, just to kind of showcase everything I've learned in my financial journey, and wanted to share all the resources, what worked for me, what investments worked out well, which didn't. And like I've shared on this podcast, some I've had really good investments and some not so good investments. Every investor out there, they have horror stories to share. And in conjunction with that, I started a sub show, if you will, on my YouTube channel called #ScrewTheW2, where this is really kind of an I don't want to say anti-work, but it was really more of the anti-W2, where unfortunately W2 paychecks, if you get paid through your employer, they are the most heavily taxed. There aren't as many tax incentives to depreciate or utilize legally tax benefits to lower your taxable income like you have with real estate or cash flowing businesses, et cetera. All that being said, unfortunately, just the last 4 years, I've really, like I said, I've enjoyed what I've done. I'm glad I did this podcast. I'm glad I did this website. But it is time to put a pause for it for a number of reasons. I have a family now. My son is over 2 and is growing, and I want to spend more time with him. Like I said, I had some investments that did well and some that didn't pan out so well. And with some of, shall we just say life lessons, and life gets in the way. I'm not going to go through a whole, woe is me or pity party or anything like that. But really had to take a step back, and I just had to acknowledge that as much as I've enjoyed this, I have not been able to turn it into a substantial, profitable business, whatever form that would take. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can empathize with that. Sometimes you have a podcast just for fun, or maybe a supplement to your business to hopefully grow the business. But in general, just wasn't able to grow it as a, full-time profitable business. I had a lot of ideas over the years, wanted to do some courses, even the community ed classes I tried to pick up here in little Marshall, Minnesota. Those just never really gained traction. The YouTube channel started with a bunch of lessons, almost was getting to the point of monetizing, but then Google keeps changing the benchmarks as far as how many downloads and listenership and views and subscribers and everything else you need in order to get to subscribing. Or in order to get to monetization. So, long story short, it just comes to the point you have to take a step back. I think everyone has this in life, that you just kind of have to look and see what works best for you. Try not to double down on a losing strategy. And sometimes, statistically, businesses fail. New businesses there's a big substantial data, if you will, that most new businesses are going to fail within the first 5 years. Now, I'm not going to say that this failed per se, but it just didn't go to the depth and breadth that I was hoping for. So again, please know, for all the listenership, for all the emails, the tweets, the messages, the likes, just so you know, I really have appreciated all that. I have met so many wonderful people through this podcast. I've been a guest on numerous other podcasts as well. This is definitely something I do not regret doing. Do not regret starting the Wealth and Freedom Nexus. I do not regret starting this podcast. But at the end of the day, I just have to take a deep look inside and understand, where is my life going? For investors seeking DSCR financing, check out timothyhero.com. The guy has closed over 150 DSCR loans in the last 2 years and has been appearing on podcasts and written about by journalists. He's well connected with some of the best lenders in the game and can get you the financing for your rental properties. So with that as a final note, so like I mentioned before, this podcast, I won't say is coming to an end. I am just going to be putting a pause on it. There's a lot of work with doing a podcast, from scheduling the guests, the recordings, the editing, the show notes, the publication, the finding sponsorships. I mean, there's a lot behind the scenes that you don't see this. There were weeks that I was spending 5 to 10 hours on this podcast, my website, my YouTube channel. And like I said, at the end of the day, just did not get to as profitable as a venture as I wanted to get to. And, it's hard. It wasn't how I envisioned it, but, that's life. That's how things are. So this podcast will be on pause. I'll just say this won't be ending. I hope to pick it up in some capacity later on in the future. I just don't know when that's going to be. Is that going to be 3 months, 6 months, a year, longer? I don't know. But I have listened to so many podcasts where they just kind of abruptly end. They just like, oh gosh, what happened to John? He had this podcast and he said, stay tuned for next week where I have X, and nothing ever happened. So I want to put in a, official pause, official episode ending. Episode 115 will be the last episode of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast for some time. And my hashtag Screw the W2 show on YouTube, which I was hoping to relaunch in podcast format, I just really don't have the time for it. So that will be on hold indefinitely. We'll see if that picks up later or gets rebranded on a podcast as well. Again, both avenues, my podcast, my YouTube channel, everything. I don't regret it. I've met a lot of very interesting people. I have learned myself so much. And for those out there, if you've been listening to this and thinking, gosh, I'd like to start my own podcast, I don't want to discourage you. Go for your hopes and dreams. Just know there are a lot of podcasts out there. There are many, many, many podcasters out there with deeper pockets, bigger budgets, bigger marketing campaigns than like an individual solopreneur can do. So I just want you to know of the risks and rewards going into it, know what to expect. And like I said, not to discourage you, but just know that there's a lot involved in that. As a final note, like I said, I always introduce myself as investor, educator, and realtor. Now, as an investor, I'm still investing, but definitely have scaled back my investments. Some have done better than others, just the way it is. And yeah, we'll just see what the future holds for that. For educator, well, that is really taken a different step in my life. I was actually approached and hired full-time at the local university here, Southwest Minnesota State University, teaching marketing and business classes. And obviously that is going to take a lot of my time. I'm actually going to be teaching overload here in spring of 2024. So again, I just kind of have to look back of prioritizing where to put my time, where to focus my efforts, have a family to support, got bills to pay. And as much as this podcast has been fun, it frankly just unfortunately doesn't pay the bills. So the educator piece is still very prominent in my life. I hope to continue this at SMSU for quite some time. We'll see what the future brings. But as much as I said, screw the W2 back in 2019, life happens. It's the way it is. I have to go back into the W2 workforce. The entrepreneurship, business ownership isn't as easy as so many people make it out to be. And some businesses flourish and some just kind of flounder. And I've just come to the acceptance, especially on the last part with realtor. My real estate business just didn't really pick up as much as I wanted to. I wanted to cater to a niche audience for helping them invest, like using FHA and VA loans to buy multifamilies, live in one unit, rent out the others, more kind of an investor focused. But unfortunately, just in the market here of, being a small town, just isn't that much of a market demand for it. And, full disclosure, disclosure, I've had like my best year, I had 4 transactions. My worst year, 2021, I had 2 transactions and some in between there as well. So with that final note, kind of taking a step back with my realtor activities, got a few clients that I'm working with closing out for 2024. But after that, I will probably either put my license on ice or maybe just lapse it all together. I haven't made a final decision on that. So like I said, I wanted to just share all this, not a woe is me, not as a pity party, just wanted to showcase this out there that, sometimes the best laid out plans just don't come to fruition. And sometimes, you take those risks, you start that business, you get that investment, even with all the due diligence and education, all the education associated with it, some things just don't pan out like you hope for. And at the end of the day, that's life. That's how things go. So with that, in closing, thank you again for your listenership. Thank you again for your patronage. It's been an honor that I've been able to share my message, share my stories, share my guests with all of you that tuned in every single Wednesday. Kept that consistent for over 2 years. But like I said, I will be putting this podcast on pause. So whether I pick that up in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or hey, full disclosure, maybe this will never pick up again. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but I wanted to have a very concise podcast end. It seemed like at the end of 2023, since it was the last episode for the year, it seemed to kind of coincide well. It's like, hey, this is going to be a good break or a good stopping point as well. So again, thank you all for your patronage. Please feel free to reach out. I'm not going anywhere, but I am taking a large step back from the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast website. Exercises, if you will be very much on the back burner of my life as I focus on my family, my friends, my health, and my new full-time work endeavor to just see where life kind of takes me. So with that, as I always say to a number of friends, this is not goodbye. This is see you later. So again, thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your listenership. Please stay in touch, and we will see what 2024 and the following years bring.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to share, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. For more updates, check out www.wealthandfreedomnexus.com. Remember, nothing on this show should be considered tax, legal, investment, or professional advice. This show is produced solely for educational and informational purposes. Please consult an appropriate and licensed tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for specific advice for your situation. For distribution or publication rights or media interviews, please contact the host.